Morning, everyone. Janie here. We are at part 2 of reading the New Testament. My part 1 was my last video. I don't say this often, but if you would like to like the video and maybe subscribe, um, my channel is the smallest channel on the planet, but I would appreciate it. All right, so we are at chapter 5 of Matthew, which is basically when Jesus has his Sermon on the Mount. His Sermon on the Mount. Sermon. Oh my God, how French was that? I apologize. His Sermon on the Mount, which basically was his teaching of the parables. He has many parables. This is how Jesus communicates to us. More specifically, how he communicates to the chosen ones, I guess we can say, is through parables. So, if you're smart enough to understand what he's saying, then you know what's happening. So I'm just going to read the beginning of the Beatitudes and then kind of sift through them, but I won't go through all the parables in this video. I may make another video about the parables because the book of Matthew is one of my favorite books of the New Testament, and I think there's a lot to be learned from the parables. So let's start with verse 3 of the Beatitudes. God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for him, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. God blesses those who are humble, for they will inherit the whole earth. And God blesses those who hunger and thirst for justice, for they will be satisfied. God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy. God blesses those whose hearts are pure, for they will see God. God blesses those who work for peace, for they will be called the children of God. God blesses those who are persecuted for doing right, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. God blesses you when people mock you and persecute you and lie about you and say all sorts of evil things against you because you are my followers. Remember, people, we live in Satan's world. So if people are laughing at you and persecuting you, it's probably a sign you're doing it right. Be happy about it. Be very glad, just like Jesus is saying, for a great reward awaits you in heaven. And remember, the ancient prophets were persecuted in the same way. Jesus was not treated right. No one that teaches the light will be treated right. So what you lack here on earth, God and Jesus will provide to you in heaven times a bajillion. So don't worry about the materials. Something way better will happen after you pass. So of course there's the teaching about salt and light, comparing humans to salt. Some humans can lose the flavor of their salt. I'm sure you know what this means. It just means that I think people can really easily lose their faith. You are the salt of the earth, but what good is the salt if it has lost its flavor? Can you make it salty again? It will be thrown out and trampled underfoot as worthless. There's also teaching about the law, teaching about how Jesus would handle anger, teachings about adultery, about divorce, about vows. Vows. No one should be making vows unless you are at the holiest of holies. When I first found God, again, as a Christian, not as a Catholic, when I found God a couple months ago, I actually did not take vows as seriously as I should have, and I actually made a couple vows to God, like I won't be negative for a whole day, or stupid things like that. And vows are not to be messed around with. Let's read here, teaching about vows, verses 33. You have also heard that our ancestors were told, you must not break your vows. You must carry out the vows you make to the Lord. But I say, do not make any vows. Do not say by heaven, because heaven is God's throne. And do not say by the earth, because the earth is his footstool. And do not say by Jerusalem, for Jerusalem is the city of the great king. Do not even say by my head, for you can't turn one hair white or black. Just say a simple yes, I will, or no, I won't. Anything beyond this is from the evil one. And that's interesting, from the evil one. It reminds me of the story of Jephthah, if I'm saying that right. Someone in the Old Testament that had made a vow to God. It was when they were taking over the lands that were owned by the Nephilim and the giants and all the really evil people of the world. And God's people were going around with their army and just taking over the land slowly for God's people. So when it came to Jephthah, he was one of the great judges of the Old Testament, a prophet, a fighter, and he actually went to war. And he told God, God, if we win this war, if you let us, please let us win. And if we win, I will give you the first family member that runs out of my house after that come to greet me after the war. That first person that steps out to greet me, I will sacrifice to you. So of course, he comes back from the war. They won. Of course they won. God was on his side anyways. He did not need to take that vow. God was going to help him either way. So it was very foolish. I think he was overexcited at the time. So of course, his daughter runs out of his house. Daddy, I'm so happy to see you. And he made a vow to God that he would sacrifice her. So he actually ends up sacrificing his only daughter to God. And you know what? I think God found this unnecessary, just as Jesus has. And you can tell that for that same reason, it just took that one story about vows for me to be like, nope, not doing the vow thing. Personally, I think if you were to take a vow, it should be something not tied in with a blood sacrifice, because vows are very, very celestial and, like I said, heavenly, and it should not tie in with a blood sacrifice. So I think that was just a really bad combination. So he didn't want to break his vow to God. He does end up sacrificing his child, this Jephthah judge. So even Jesus say, don't do that. Just don't do that. Simply say, yes, I will. No, I won't. So I thought that was an interesting teaching and story. He also teaches about revenge. Eye for an eye, don't do that. Let him slap one cheek, let your enemy slap the other cheek. Complete opposite. Not opposite of the Old Testament, but let's read it. Verse 38. You have heard the law that says the punishment must match the injury, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say, do not resist an evil person. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, offer the left cheek also. If you are sued in court and your shirt is taken from you, give your coat too. If a soldier demands that you carry his gear for a mile, carry it 2 miles. Give to those who ask, and don't turn away from those who want to borrow. So I just think that whatever you give in this world, even if it's to an evil person, God will reward you times whatever in heaven. Of course, teaching about how to love your enemies, teaching about giving to the needy, teaching about prayer and fasting, teaching about money and possessions, teaching about not judging other people, how to do effective prayers, and Jesus' golden rule to do others whatever you would like to do to them to do to you. This is the essence of all that is taught in the law and the prophets. So that's what we call the golden rule. The narrow gate. Of course, this is a good one. Verse 13, you can enter God's kingdom only through the narrow gate. The highway to hell is broad, and his gates are wide. Many who choose that way. It's broad, and the gates are huge because so many people have chosen that path. And it's not because it's just a bigger path. It just needs to accommodate all the sinners. But the gateway to life is very narrow, and the road is difficult, and only a few ever find it.